What's up, horror fan? Welcome back to the channel. So it's that time of week. Dexter Original Sin, episode 6 just dropped yesterday. We completed our review of the episode this morning, so we are going to be going into spoilers of this episode as we have been doing thus far for this series. So if you have not watched this episode and you plan on doing so, hit the pause button, go watch the episode, come back and let us know down in the comment section whether or not you agree with my take on this, whether you agree that, this episode, turn the corner for the series and it's really starting to pick up, or if you feel it's still just an unnecessary series, we're not learning anything new as far as the characters or what really got Dexter to where he was in the original series. So we're going to be getting into those details now. So again, spoilers for this episode. All right, so where we pick up from here, we already know Harry's been demoted. Harry had a big screw up in a case. Levi Reed got set free. And it is what it is, right? Harry made a mistake by not, listening to a witness for an alibi, pushed it off. The defense used that against Harry, and the whole case got tanked, and Levi got set free. So now Harry got demoted. He's now working, these bottom of the barrel cases with LaGuerta. And there seems to now be a second overarching case happening. So if you remember during the first few episodes, one of Judge Powell's son, Jimmy, was kidnapped. And that was pretty much the overarching story at first. And then we almost felt like Dexter's was a side story, or side quest, so to speak. And eventually we got to a point where Jimmy was found retired, and now Miami Metro PD has been trying to solve that case, trying to find the killer. Now we find here where Captain Spencer's son, Nicky, has now been kidnapped, and we can conclude that it's the same person because where Nicky is eventually taken, it's the same exact dark room dungeon where Jimmy was kept. So now we have that overarching story back into play on top of a case that LaGuerta and Harry are working, where it appears there's a serial killer loose within the homeless and gay community. Now, during the scene where we have this third victim, Dexter's there taking pictures, and he gives LaGuerta and Harry his thoughts on the killer, the mindset of the killer, and that all three cases and murders are connected. They don't believe him. LaGuerta kind of dismisses it, says, hey, you're reaching, we need more information. Harry pulls him aside and said, hey, you leave the detective work to the detectives. You kind of just do your thing. Pretty much stay in your lane. Dexter kind of, doesn't blow it off, but is kind of not, taken aback a bit. Yeah, hey, I'm in the mindset of this person because I am one of these types of people, killing others, right? So I think at first when he's giving his summary, Harry sees that. And I think the reason Harry's telling him to stay in your lane, so to speak, is I know who you are. I know you kill people, but we don't need to, kind of raise suspicions above, with everyone else that, hey, how do you know the mindset so well, or why would you think this way, right? So I think that's probably why Harry did that. Now, again, Captain Spencer's son, Nicky, has been kidnapped. Now they're working against a timeline, the same timeline that Jimmy had. So they know by day 4 that they should expect a severed finger, as they did with the first child. And then by day 10, it's possible that, his son, Nicky, could turn up retired, right? So they're trying to work against that timeline. So now we move on through the episode. Harry, it seems like, again, I've mentioned this before, every time Harry comes up in the episodes, if they're not really small bits and pieces of a scene for him, anything to deal with where he's having a long sequence, they give a flashback. And that's exactly what happened here. We had two or three more flashbacks here, and as I've said before, it seems like that's the point of Harry's character, is to give us these flashbacks with how he met Laura Moser, who's Dexter's mother, their relationship, eventually their affair, and how that all played out. Again, nothing that we didn't already know and find out through the original series. Again, I feel like all this is doing is just giving us the visual of the information we already know. So in those flashbacks, at least in that first flashback, Laura mentions to Harry she's tired of being the quote other woman and doesn't want to be Harry's CI anymore, but Harry convinces her, hey, you got to keep doing this. We're trying to build this case. We're almost there. and really puts her in jeopardy because we find a scene where she shows up to this cartel's warehouse and another individual is there tied up, has his finger severed, and they tell her, hey, you've been promoted because this person's going away. But she now fears for her life that if she shows back up or continues down this path, that she could be the next one sitting in that chair and then being retired as well. So we now, as far as where Deborah's being Deborah, right? She's got her new boyfriend, which the boyfriend I'm growing some suspicions on. I mean, he's driving the fancy sports cars. He's got all this money. He's flashing. He obviously appears to be much older than Deborah. I mean, we know Deborah's still in high school, but again, it just seems very odd that where is all this coming from? He said before that he works for his dad, but we don't know what his dad does. So I'm thinking his dad is part of the cartel or is the head of the cartel that they all originally believed was kidnapping these kids. I do think though he's in something shady. It just doesn't seem right. So they all, Deborah and the boyfriend, go on a double date with Dexter and Sophia, and as you would imagine, Dexter is as odd as he has always been. Doesn't know really how to interact. When it comes time to ordering, he orders like 4 or 5 things, and everyone has this shocked look on his face. And as the dinner plays out, you can just tell it's a very uncomfortable situation. So while he was there, Sophia, decided, I'm going to, let's just put it bluntly, take Dexter's virginity, which she did in the men's room. And as they were leaving, they decided to play a prank on one of the volleyball players that Deborah and Sophia don't necessarily like. So they end up at her house. They steal her car. Deborah and Gio, the boyfriend, ditch the car on the beach. Sophia and Dexter end up going on their own, where that whole sequence and story pretty much ends as far as Deborah, Gio, and Sophia. So again, as we're moving on through this episode, Dexter, as he's trailing, stalking, however you want to call it, Levi Reed, because if you remember, Levi Reed is the one that got away from the case. He was let go because of Harry's mistake. And in a previous episode, Harry was going to kill Levi. He was outside, had a gun. Dexter stopped him, put the tranquilizer in him, kept him from doing it, gave Dexter the okay to take Levi out. So as he's following Levi, he runs into another officer. So he sees Clark Sanders. So Clark Sanders is the one that, I don't want to say he's been taking Dexter under his wing, but has been trying to coach Dexter as to, the things that you're seeing as a cop, dead bodies, dead kids, things of that nature, on how to handle it. So at first, over the last 2-3 episodes, they started growing a bond. And in this situation, Dexter runs into Clark Sanders outside a gay bar, and you can clearly see Clark is shocked, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? He's found out who I really am, because based on his look, based on the shock that he had, this is a well-kept secret. No one in the precinct knows that this is his life, and now you can see he's kind of worried. Now, I want to take a pause there. I'm wondering, based on this other story we have going on, where we've seen 3 homeless individuals within the gay community killed, I'm wondering if somewhere within the next, I think we have 4 episodes left, that Clark Sanders is killed because of his lifestyle. It would make sense if that happened, to bring it a little bit closer to home for Dexter to then really want to go after whoever this killer is that would have now been killing 4 people. So I'm wondering if that was purposefully done, again, to add a bit more to that side story, that overarching story that we're seeing play out, that LaGuerta and Harry are investigating. So, quick interaction between Dexter and Clark. Dexter doesn't think anything about it. He's just like, hey, I gotta go, I'm meeting a friend, see you later. And again, doesn't think nothing about it. Moves on, continues to stalk Levi. So Dexter makes contact with Levi, of course, tranquilizer, now that he's starting to use that, gets Levi on the table, strapped down, and now we see how this plays out, right? Earlier on in the episode, we find out, or at least we don't find out, Dexter lays out the fact that 3 or more kills, the FBI considers you a serial killer. To this point, Dexter's only killed 2, because if you remember, his 3rd kill got away from him and was hit by a car by somebody else. So now with Levi on the going to be on the table, Dexter starting to realize he would now be considered a serial killer. So before we get to that, that point of this episode, we do get another flashback with Harry, and Harry is told or contacted by his partner, hey, you need to get to the hospital. And this is where we find out that Deborah is born. And not only is Deborah born, but Doris confronts Harry, letting him know, hey, you need to end it with this other person. I know you've been having an affair this entire time. You need to end it. Now, I will say that was a bit shocking. I don't recall from the original series that we knew that Doris found out at that time or had known the whole time and confronted Harry, and then that's what ended the relationship between Harry and Laura, whether that's a romantic relationship or just overall, like she's no longer a CI, which then we know eventually leads to Laura being killed. So we get that flashback as far as how Doris either knew or had known this whole time, confronts Harry, and then that's where the flashback ends. We don't get another flashback at that point. So I'd imagine in episode 7, we're going, or at least, for the next 4 episodes until this series ends, we're going to see various flashbacks up into the point where Laura is killed and Dexter and Brian are found in the shipping container that's filled with blood. I imagine we're going to see that at some point in this series, at least in the next few episodes, because I can't imagine this show will end with Harry still being alive. I think at some point, either between halfway through episode 9 or somewhere in 10, Harry will end up killing himself, and then we move on to resurrection, because we know the kids, meaning Deborah and Dexter, believe that Harry had a heart attack, but we find out in the original series over time he actually took his own life. All right, so that's that flashback. That's my prediction as far as the next couple of episodes on how that's going to play out. Now back to the captain's son being kidnapped. They believe, they're looking at who all would have a motive to go after the captain's son. So they're thinking it's Rafael Campos who had Nikki kidnapped. Now I don't necessarily think it's Campos. I think it's going to be. I mean, obviously, we don't know who it is, and we wouldn't have an idea of a previous case. So it's going to boil down, just for the fact of the severed fingers, someone within the cartel. And I don't think it's going to be directly Rafael Campos. I think it's going to be somebody else that is going to be a surprise that might tie us back into the original series. Now, whether or not Dexter finds this individual before the police do and takes him out, saves Nikki, and then they just never find out who the killer is, that's always an option as well, because Dexter is hell-bent on finding out who this person is because it's harming children, right? So we'll have to wait and see how this one plays out. I don't think we're going to see another kidnapping. I think the captain's son will be the final one, and then again, because we only have 4 episodes, Dexter will eventually find out who it is and then take him out. So we come to the end of the episode. Dexter ends up killing Levi, but before he does, Levi pretty much tells Dexter, hey, you're no different than me. I'm a serial killer. You're a serial killer. I do it for the enjoyment, and I know you're doing it for the enjoyment as well. So Dexter kind of has this reflecting moment, and I don't know if that Dexter necessarily believes what he's telling him, but you can see as Dexter pulls away and doesn't kill him right away that he does believe him to an extent that, oh, maybe I do enjoy this. And he does. If you listen to the talkovers that Michael C. Hall is doing, you listen to some of the actions and things that he's done through 6 episodes, he does find some level of pleasure thus far in doing this because he's feeding that dark passenger. So I don't necessarily disagree with what Levi is saying to Dexter. It's just a moment in Dexter's life, gonna become a serial killer, not sure how I feel about this, but hey, I'm gonna move on with it, gonna do it anyways. Kills Levi, and surprisingly, he doesn't dismember the body like he did Tony in one of the previous episodes, the Lone Shark Tony. He dismembered Tony's body, took him to Gator Alley, dumped the body, and moved on. Now with Levi's body, he's fully wrapped in plastic, puts him in the back of the truck, and starts heading to Gator Alley. Now this is finally where I mentioned earlier, I literally said out loud, finally they are coming back to this point. So he gets there and he is stopped by police saying, hey, get out of the car. And then the camera angle starts to pan up over the swamp, and we get over to a point where it comes back down and the cops are there, and Tony's arm that floated to the top is now sitting there, and it focuses right on the arm and the pinky ring, and the episode ends. I've been saying now for, I think, 2 episodes, when are they going to, maybe 3 episodes, when are they going to come to this point? Because there was a purpose for that arm floating to the top, and I can't imagine it's not going to be found. And here we are, it's found. I'm wondering now if we're going to find out if they do find the earrings as well. Nurse Mary's earrings that Dexter threw in there that he kept as a trophy. Harry told him to get rid of them, and he threw them in the water when he disposed of Tony's body. So they found the arm. So I'm wondering now if they're also going to find those earrings and then somehow tie those back to the missing nurse. If they do, I don't see, maybe Dexter killing 1 or 2 more people in the next 4 episodes. Otherwise, it's going to be all now. How do we continue to work the cases? The Captain's son's missing, this new serial killer, and how is Dexter going to be covering his tracks? Because now Harry's going to find out that this has been uncovered, and now they're going to have to figure out how do we now make sure Dexter doesn't get caught. So that's where we're at with episode 6. Episode 7 is going to be titled The Big Bad Body Problem, which, based on that title alone, I think they will be focusing on the fact that Tony's body, or at least a part of his body, has been found. And again, what do Harry and Dexter do to ensure this doesn't come back on Dexter as far as him being a suspect? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, obviously, we know he doesn't get caught because we wouldn't have the original series, we wouldn't have New Blood, and we wouldn't be getting Resurrection this year as well. So we know Dexter doesn't get caught, and I think that's part of the problem with this prequel is you already know, again, Dexter makes it out fine. It's just a matter of how does he go about not getting caught, I think is the bigger question here. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for our summary of episode 6 of Dexter Original Sin, titled The Joy of Killing. Let us know what you think down in the comment section below. Did you enjoy the episode if you've seen it? Do you agree? And I would give this one, I would say of the 6 episodes thus far, this is probably the best one that we've gotten. I would probably now, I think I gave the series a 2.5, maybe a 3 when we got episode 5. I would bump this now to a 3. I'd give the series a 3. This one was much better than the previous episodes. I'm glad we are finally going back and addressing the fact that Tony's arm floated to the top, and now we're going to see how this plays out. So yeah, I'm at a 3. It's an average show for me at this point. As I've mentioned before, this episode hasn't saved it for me. I will not go back and watch this again. This will be a one and done for me, unless in the next 4 episodes they just absolutely kill it and turn this into just an amazing show, which I don't think they will. I don't think they have enough runway to do that in the next 4 episodes because they have 3 stories going on. And I think the boyfriend of Deborah, Gio, I think that's a separate story. I think there's more to it than what we're getting. So that could be something else that comes up. So you have the kidnapping, you have one serial killer, you have Dexter's problems now arising with these body parts coming up. And again, I think the 4th one is going to be what's going on with Gio, the person who's dating Deborah. I think there's more to that story than what we're getting, and we might see more of that in the next 4 episodes. And if they do, that's a lot of ground to cover in 4 episodes, which again, it could get messy. So we'll see. Again, let us know down in the comments what you think, what's your rating of the show thus far, and if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you are already a subscriber, thank you for all of the support. It is greatly appreciated, and we will see you next week. All right, peace.